All-American guard playing center, two of the best guards in the nation playing guards, first round talent on the left side at tackle, and Xavier Truss, who's been at Georgia for 47 years.
Welcome to My God a Podcast. I'm Jim Wood. In this episode, John Powell and I are joined by Radi Nabulsi to kick off our 5th season. We talk about Radi's thoughts on the 2024 Dogs, how different college football will look this season, and much, much more. As always, remember to check out the newly redesigned mygodapodcast.com to see our latest merch. You can follow us on social media at mygodapodcast. Finally, if you need help with your website or your online presence, head over to workingwebmedia.com/dogs. Now, let's join the conversation in progress. Okay. All right. After this is probably our most extensive hiatus we've had on the podcast. I will take the blame for that. That's on me. But at any rate, we're back. And if you're watching,
always Jim's fault.
Always my fault. I needed a break. I took advantage of the summer. But if you're watching on YouTube, you see that not only is John here with me, but we've got a special guest for this, our season 5 premiere, I guess, episode of My God a Podcast. So welcome, Radi Nabulsi. No introduction needed, but welcome to My God a Podcast. We're happy to have you.
Thanks for having me, guys. I really appreciate it.
Man, you're like the OG of online media personalities. I feel like for UGA. I can remember reading and watching your content from UGA Sports. Like, man, I mean, it's got to be when I was in college. Like when I was like a junior or senior in college was when I kind of started getting into the recruiting scene, and you were like one of the first ones on that scene.
Yeah, I mean, I started in. God, this sounds horrible. That started in 1993. So this will be my 31st year covering Georgia. And I was a team photographer, wrote some articles for Bulldog Magazine back in the day. I worked in the Athletic Association for years. And then when I graduated in 95, they're like, hey, we don't have any staff. There's never been a photographer position at UGA. Multi-million dollars, and they never actually hired a staffer. They rely on students. And when I left, they're like, we'd like you to keep working for us. I'm like, I graduated, man. I can't help you. I said, well, what if we had a little contract side deal with you? I'm like, okay, now we got it. Give me a pass, parking pass for my boys who are driving a conversion van to the Tennessee games and stuff like that, and give me a film on the sideline, and we'll do it. So then I went over and started working for Steve Patterson at UGA Sports, and had
that's another name.
Years and years ago. I guess it's been on 20 years, so or longer. And then the internet came around, or not the internet, but the Twitter came around, and that's when I'm like, this works great. Back when it was only 140 characters, and it took forever to upload a photo, but it's been fun. It's an absolute blast, and it's nice to meet people who are like, yeah, I used to follow you when I was in college. I'm like, hey,
yeah, not to age you.
How old am I?
To be fair, you look great, man. You've lost a lot of weight. I think I commented on that a while back, and you were like, yeah, man, I've lost a lot of weight.
I did. Well, that's the problem is you sit here and do stuff on Twitter all day and eat ho-hos. It's bad as hell. So no, it's basically what I learned to do was to do all of my business calls, call my staff, call my guys, do everything on the phone while walking. So I get out, put in the earbuds, and I call Anthony Dasher. Hey, let's talk about this. Call Jed May, talk about this. And they're like, crap, boss is walking again. Here's another hour-long phone call. It made it easier for me. But I do appreciate the kind words, but it's mainly I've been lucky in that I hired and worked for great people at UGA Sports, and it's the community. I can leave tomorrow, and UGA Sports will be completely fine. It's that, those tens of thousands of people who take care of each other and argue with each other and yell at each other and fundraise for each other and tailgate together and then fight each other and they walk over your parking lot. That is community at UGA Sports, and I'm just lucky to be a part of it.
Yeah, you mentioned some other big personalities in the UGA online world too. Like you guys really have put together like a really good staff. I think that was like one of the OG online content websites for UGA again. The dog vent, obviously legendary. I think Jim and I were talking about the other day that there's like some guys that just like still have the same comments, same topics they like to discuss.
Wasn't 3 Year Letterman like born from the dog vent? Or am I making that up?
I don't
Kind
think he's
of.
born there. I mean, he's very creative, but NASCAR dog
Yeah.
is his handle on the bit. And I will say that that was a great place for him to refine his, if you will, because
Hone his craft.
hone his craft, absolutely. But again, it's that irreverence, that he has on Twitter that makes him such a great personality. And he's professional. I mean, people kind of think of him as he is brilliant at what he does. He's like you said, honed his craft incredibly well. The best follow on Twitter, hands down. But he's also
Absolutely.
a riot on the dog vent, and he comes up because he's a huge Georgia fan, and
Yeah. Yeah.
he's got a great book out, and there are hundreds of NASCAR dogs on the board, and that's
Yeah.
why when anything happens, the first thing I feel like doing, good or bad news, bad personal news, good personal news, I can't wait to tell my second family what happened.
Yeah.
Like I got a surprise coming with my son. He's hopefully at the end of August, something good's going to happen. And I'm like, I want to tell them today, but I can't because I got to spring it on them at the end of August. And it's going to be great. And at the same time, it's like if anything bad happens, you go talk to those folks and they make you feel better because they joke on you, they rip on you, they pray for you. But it's a great community, and NASCAR Dog is, 3 Year Letterman is one of our best. We also have a bunch of former Georgia players on there all the time.
Yeah.
Bunch of golfers. I mean, like Brian Harmon texted me before his first Masters Wednesday. Okay, Thursday's going to be his first round.
Yeah.
He texts me and goes, "Hey, I read the dog vent. Really enjoy your work." I'm like, shouldn't you be looking at the course or something? I love Brian Harmon and Kevin Gisner and all those guys who are members of the dog vent. They're the best.
Yeah. The Georgia community, we always say is undefeated. So
Yeah,
glad to
absolutely.
hear feel the same way.
Well, they lost once. They're not undefeated. They're 999-1.
Okay.
The bowl game against Wisconsin. I've never seen people tailgate like the Wisconsin folks did in Orlando, Tampa, wherever that was, that bowl game.
The one like when Ron Dane was
Yeah,
at
something like
Wisconsin.
Yeah, because they brought out that giant band. They were so happy to be in Florida.
Yeah,
The
that was
Georgia fans
that was the Outback Bowl. Bobo
Out
and
there you
Heinz
go,
Ward, like their
Outback.
last game. Yeah.
That's the only time I'll give them credit for that. That was the only party I've ever seen Georgia fans not win.
Nice. Okay. That was like my last year of high school, so I maybe made some influence when I got to college, putting into that stuff. I know like before we had hit record, John and I. Sorry, Carter. We've got Carter has entered the chat.
Carter has entered the chat.
We were there so John and I were in school for like the Donnan to Rick transition, but it sounds like you were there for what, Goff to Donnan, right?
Yes. One of my first assignments was, hey, we need you at the stadium. Bring your gear. I just started working for UGA. I think it had been a whole year. And I get down there and they're like, we need you to take a picture of this guy. And I'm like, who's that? I didn't recognize him. They're like, that's Jim Donna. He's the new Georgia head coach. I'm like, oh, okay. So we take Donna down, and you remember the Granite Bulldog that was in the end zone there?
Yeah.
We set up a table. It's me and Dave Toulis, the photographer for the AJC. But I'm running it, and Dave's kind of beside me. But of course, I deferred to Dave because he's a whole lot better than me. But it's supposed to be my shoot. And we get a picture of Donna, and standing on a table next to the Bulldog. He actually leaned over and kissed it. And I got a picture of that. He'll never let me use it. And, so we kind of got him, with his hand on everything. Then eventually we took him up into the steps and just put a Georgia helmet on his knee. He kind of had one knee up on one of the, I guess, maybe row 45. And that was the press photo that they used when they announced the head coach. And it was supposed to be Glenn Mason, then it was him. And, so it was actually basically a press release. Not everybody knew who it was going to be. And back in the day when there weren't a ton of internet sites going with all the rumors, they could make a hire and then just release the name, and they put out a press release. Jim Donovan's the head coach, and here's the glossy 8x10 photo that everybody ran in the paper the next day.
Yeah.
So yeah, he was I was there for that transition. I wasn't really covering golf a whole lot, but that's when I came up and was cutting my teeth, was on his teams, and what a great time. I mean, I got to cover Champ Bailey and Boss Bailey and Richard Seymour, all the greats that he had, and then went right on into the Mark Richt era, covering his players. So I've got to cover the greatest athletes in the world. I mean, these guys are just absolute freaks.
It is insane the talent that has come through Athens during that time frame.
During that time frame, yeah, exactly.
Well, not pictured on screen, but John also has his dog is Champ Bailey. So just throwing that out there.
I was just about to say someone posted some insane stats about Champ Bailey in the NFL, like something like he had like 30 targets and only like 4 catches or something like that one year in the NFL. And I was like, yep, there's a reason my dog's named Champ Bailey.
Well, if you ever get a chance to talk to Coach Donna, he'll talk about him, Champ playing like 110 snaps or something like that, and still wasn't tired. And I mean, this is a guy who has coached multiple Hall of Famers, and he'll tell you hands down, it's like, no, Champ Bailey probably the best athlete I've ever coached, or at least best skill guy. He's had tight ends and defensive linemen who were all first ballot Hall of Famers, but he raves about Champ. When you look at the guys that have come through there, it's the disproportionate number that have been in the NFL, and it was so frustrating because I could cover all of Coach Donovan guys in the NFL, then all of Mark Richt's guys in the NFL, and you're like, they had the number 2 or number 3 most players in the NFL. Where's that title? Where's that championship? It's very frustrating. And then he got it. Kirby Smart got it. But to this day, if you're sitting at lunch with Coach Donna and he'll get a head call, hey, Andy, it's Andy Reid, asking him something. Head coach. Mac Brown calls him from UNC. Right before the NFL Combine, he gets hundreds of calls. Everybody wants him to come scout their players.
Really?
Mark Richt, same thing. I mean, I don't know that how many people call him, but there's something about the head coaches at Georgia and their ability to see talent and pick them that everybody in the rest of them, and of course Kirby Smart's the best at it of all of them. That and they all live here, which blows my mind. They're here in Athens. I don't. Maybe it's something in the water. Maybe it's something in the Butts Mirror building. But those guys, they can sure pick them.
So it's interesting that you talk about that progression from Don and Richt to Kirby. Like it just seemed like that progressively from Goff all the way through Kirby that they're just constantly breaking the ceiling as they progress in the coaching. Like, what do you think is the biggest difference as you progress through the coaching staffs? Like, what makes Georgia? How do you go from point A to point B and end with back-to-back national championships? Although it's not ended, right? We're still rolling. But you know what I mean? Like, what's been the biggest difference between the staffs?
When you look at what Coach Donnan had, very little support. I mean, his basically fight with the president is legendary. That's how that rolled out. Mark Richt had his hands tied behind his back, and he wouldn't do some of the more underhanded stuff. And of course, Donna was going up against Tennessee and Florida being at the apex, and both in his position. Kirby Smart. I mean, Mark Richt. I remember there was somebody who was accused or even threatened or somehow connected to a player having a car, and this was a big donor. And Mark's like, pull their season tickets. Like, I don't know that that they're guilty. Pull it. I mean, what I hated for Mark Richt, I always wanted to tell my son's 20. I always wanted to be able to point to Mark Richt and say, that's a guy who did it perfectly well, had a lot more support, especially from the administration, than Coach Donnan had. He did it the right way when a lot of people around him were cheating, and he won the title. Yeah. And I was never able to tell him that. So. Then Kirby gets here and Kirby's
Yeah,
like, look,
2012,
yeah,
2005, things are just a little bit different.
Yeah.
right. And then Kirby gets here and they're like, okay, we're going to give you less. And to this day, he has gotten more support from the administration to put them on the level of these other teams. But he still has to fight for everything. Everyone thinks, oh, Kirby's gotten everything he wanted. No. There are people within the administration, the school administration, not the athletic association, but the school controls the athletic association, and he doesn't have everything he wants. He's got a lot. He has it better. I think if Jim Donnan and Mark Richt had the same resources. I mean, you're using one plane, so one coach gets to fly somewhere to recruit.
Mm-hmm.
Kirby Smart's got all his coaches on different planes going places.
Yeah.
Helicopters.
And the Kirby copter.
Helicopters, yeah.
The Kirby copter. Yeah,
I mean,
it's funny.
There's not a better guy out there who could identify talent than Coach Donnan. There's not a great, I mean, he's in the Hall of Fame for having the most effective, leading the league in a rushing defense and leading the league in passing defense. He can go, whatever style of offense you want, Coach Donnan can do it. Mark Richt, obvious Hall of Famer. Look at that win-loss record. Could do whatever. I mean, he sometimes would have a bad coordinator, but his offense has always won. He won. He could recruit at the highest levels. Kirby Smart does the same thing, but he does out-recruit even those two guys.
Yeah. I think
he also has the support. And so to me, I mean, Kirby will tell you, I remember being told, when I was recruited to the University of Georgia, they took me into the locker room and said, yeah, this locker room is what it is now, but it's going to be changed. We're going to have a new one. 25 years later, he's the head coach, and he's like, we're still in that same locker room. So they've been making this promise for 20 plus years. So he finally gets the new locker room. He finally gets, you remember the fake indoor facility?
Yes.
the Findorms.
Yeah, exactly. So to me, you want to know what finally gets you to that level. And just as we were talking, the fact that you could point to the NFL rosters by school and look and see that Georgia has 46, and this is under Mark Richt, 46 active NFL members and 2 SEC titles and no championships. You're like, what's going on in Georgia?
Yeah.
Not only was it the administration, but the school wasn't all bought in. And that's the biggest thing Kirby has to fight with now is getting into Georgia. I got into 93, man. If I signed the Pell Grant, I got in. You guys had it harder than me. This generation, it's like getting into Harvard now. It is impossible to get into. And they're not making classes easier for all these eggheads that are coming in. There's no basket weaving courses, So
underwater basket weaving.
You remember the Herrick's son?
Yeah. Oh God, we were there for that. I gotta tell you, okay, Roddy, this when the ESPN story, the Jeremy Schaap thing aired, and they showed like Tony Cole's transcript or whatever. Like there was one class on there. I was like, I was in that class. So those classes don't exist anymore. But so you're taking and I don't want to name a bunch of players on the team because the people will take it the wrong way that I'm picking on them. But let's just say your top 44 guys, they have to go to an accounting class that is set at the level of all the valedictorians that got into Georgia and are taking that accounting 101 class. The Greek mythology course is set at the level of all those salutatorians who got into Georgia, all those kids from all outside the state, the best schools, the private schools, the tough schools, they all got in here, and they're not going to teach a simple class. So it's tough on them, and it's used against Georgia on the recruiting trail. They're like, hey, look, you come to Alabama, you come to Tennessee, you come to Florida. Here's the course we got laid out for you. And people give Georgia crap about their graduation rates. I'm like, well, when a bunch of them transfer, that's going to happen. And when you have these classes that are ridiculously hard and you don't have I won't say an alternative path for them, but they have to work so hard to pass their classes. And there aren't any easy classes at the university anymore. I got through, man, I think I took a bowling class. I took some psychology classes I had were nothing. The sociology test was like open book. I mean,
I took ballroom dancing one year.
The one that I had that was on Tony Cole's transcript was it was military science. It was like a recruiting class for the ROTC program, but I was like a senior when I took it. That was a good one.
I had some visibility onto some of the I have some friends that have seniors that are like, yeah, they're talking about going to Georgia. We're not really sure. And then I heard about some strategies that some of the, like you mentioned, some of the private schools, some of the private school folks, actually their senior year will transfer it into a lower school, so that on their transcripts when they're applying it, what makes it look like that they went to this tough environment school kind of thing, so that they can get into a place like Georgia.
I was at Douglas Academy in Fairburn, and then I moved to Frederick Douglass in Atlanta for my final semester. So that's where
Let's just not follow like the Lori Loughlin plan to get your kid into Georgia. We've seen how that ends.
But when you have Rick and Donnan had, they were easier classes for their kids to go to, but it's tougher for Kirby Smart right now. But Kirby can go see these kids. I mean, Georgia spent the most on its recruiting budget of any school in the nation. There's no way. I mean, what they spent in 1 year was more than they probably spent in all of Jim Donnan's tenure at Georgia. Probably the same with Mark Richt. I mean, you remember when Rick was about to be fired, it was such news that the next day, at the end of the season, after that Georgia Tech game, the next day he was in a picture of him and Jacob Eason at a bistro or something. Like, oh wow, he went all the way to Washington. I'm like, he's been fired since the Florida game. Couldn't say that, couldn't report it. I knew it, but I couldn't report it. But it was and again, where the rest of his coaches go? Nowhere. Wherever they could drop. So now Kirby can send. I mean, how many times do we talk about to a kid on the West Coast saying, the offensive coordinator came to see me 3 times, over the last 2 years, and that's why, Kendall Milton, a perfect example. It's like, hey, Dale McGee came to see me multiple times in California.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's why you have 2 championships, and that's why you're going to win a third.
Tony Waller, Tyler Dogden on the Georgia Sports Blog, another OG media site, one of the original blog platforms. He used to always say that there's a difference between committed to winning, and then there's a difference between being financially committed to winning.
Yes, financially and academically. And even now, I mean, Jared Moorhead is tight with a dollar. I mean, they closed down. Remember they had the piece of rock or something fall from the Stegman Coliseum roof? They're like, okay, we need to do an investigation. They put a hiring freeze over the entire athletic association. No promotions, no hires. And what about all the vacancies? Nope. So they used the excuse of they were going to have to look at Stegman to stop any hirings. Now that you're going to have to pay out $20 million a year in salaries to these players. Yeah. And I can tell you, I saw something just today. We've heard about the $20 million. UGA is preparing to spend $4 million additional on top of that. So nobody's heard about that yet, but it's going to be another.
Did you say with a B?
No, million. $20 million, and then $4 million on top of that. So, and again, and just in student payouts or student, I guess salary is the wrong word, but what?
Yeah. The whole
compensation.
Yeah, everything is changing like so fast there. But we've got at least we have NCAA football back. I've been playing that, so.
I mean, maybe that's a good segue to another topic about just the change that is happening right now, this year.
Yeah,
what's your perspective?
Yeah, there's so many different things. Like, is there one that you are like struggling with the most, or like wrapping your head around, or like what do you think is going to be the biggest impact like this season? So, and I was just like throw some examples. Like, there's a 2-minute warning now. They're going to have microphones to the helmets of the quarterback. Like some of these rules changes even that we were having.
12 teams in the playoffs.
12 teams in the playoffs.
I have to say, I mean, I got into an argument today on Twitter because yesterday the coaches poll came out, and Georgia was ranked number one. And I just did a quick screenshot and put it out there, and my mentions column filled up with, hey, people arguing about it. And then I was sort of thinking about it, like, wait a minute, Georgia's picked number one. They lost 8 players to the NFL.
Hmm.
They lost one game last year. They've lost 2 games in the last 3 years. Wait a minute, why were they one of the top 4 teams last year? In other words, the other coaches picked them to go number one, despite them being tied for losing the most players to the NFL. To me, at some point, and you saw Michigan is 4 or 5. They're not in the top 4. Michigan had a bunch of players drafted as well, and they're like 6 or 8 or something like that.
Well, and they also lost MVP Connor Stallions. So
yeah, so they lost their cheater and they lost their head coach, and but they also lost a lot of guys to the draft.
Yeah,
and all of a sudden they plummet to 8 or 9, and I'm like, wait a minute. But Georgia actually moves up despite losing the same number of players, and I'm like, you're going to tell me that this isn't the number one team?
Yeah,
Georgia should have been in it last year. And again, that's not me as a homer. That's me as objectively. I spoke to, when I was in Indianapolis for the NFL Combine, I spoke to a lot of people, and they're like, hey, why wasn't Georgia in the NFL, in the playoffs? Because they're all NFL guys. They don't even pay attention to it until it's time.
Right.
I'm like, I really can't tell you that. And everyone's like, well, they should have won the SEC championship. I'm like, so they had a loss, but then so did Alabama and Texas. Other teams.
Everybody had a loss.
And I'm like, so they got punished for playing an extra game. Anyway, that's a whole other show. I'm sure you guys hit on.
Preach, Radi, preach.
To your point, it's
get off my
this
lawn.
year. That won't matter.
Yeah.
So losing that one game means you're still in it. And now I think you have to start looking at this a little bit more like basketball.
Mm.
You don't start out blowing everybody off the ball. You want to peak. Not in January, which we see some basketball teams do, and then they kind of lose. Heck, Georgia did it 2 years ago. They looked really good to start the SEC season, then it just fell apart. You want to be peaking in December on into January. That's when you need to be playing your best ball, when you have to have your guys healthy. I think that kind of changes up a little bit. So to me, the biggest fundamental change is we're in the playoffs. It'll go to 16. It's too dumb to have the buys and everything. It'll go to 16 and it'll take it a few years.
Yeah.
But then they'll say, look, let's just do it this way and change it. So, but the other one is, I noticed you guys want to talk about Carson Beck and Mike Bobo in year 2.
Yeah.
I'm thinking the fact that Carson Beck, all the offenses, if you can talk to your offensive coordinator, again, then they'll say, you can't talk to him right up, with 15 seconds left on the play clock. I wonder how often that is enforced. But regardless, if you call a play into your guy and don't have to relay it, you can get it right to him. The speed at which these teams go, like the Tennessee, they are going to be able to fly. Anybody that does the no huddle, they will be able to zip like crazy. So we're going to see the game speed up, even with the pauses in it, with the 2-minute warning and everything. That's going to be different, especially if you can tell your guy, hey, here's the play. Remember, these guys against that, we've been watching them for 2 quarters. When we come out with this personnel formation, say we're in 12 or 13 or whatever, they like to show cover 2, but they rotate those guys. They show cover 2, but then they drop one back. They go single high. Watch for that. Yeah. And you can remind him as he walks up to the line. So the last thing in his mind is, oh yeah, that safety might be, coming into the box, even though they look like they're cover 2, but they're trying to trick me here. And coaches, Mike Bobo's seen a million games.
Yeah.
Him being able to do that. And again, it'll work for the other teams too. With Kiffin being able to talk to Jackson Dart or whoever, it's going to be good. So I think the offensive guys have an advantage. The defensive guys will be able to adjust very quickly. It's like, oh, wait, they came out in this, we saw this personnel, but here's the formation, and they make a change real fast. So it's going to be very interesting to see, but I could also see teams waiting till the last second to go up to the huddle because everybody knows the play. Everybody's got their calls in.
True.
And then you run right up and you get your formation. You don't give them time to switch.
Yeah, then the defense's helmet comms are turned off, right? They can't do anything about it.
So I think we have a lot to work out there, but overall, just the fact that, hey, you're in the playoffs, and now it's more, March Madness than it is the ridiculousness of, hey, we got to be number 4. You can't lose the SEC championship game. You can't go being undefeated is not good enough. Oh no, wait, being undefeated, and losing the SEC championship is not good enough. But losing a regular season game and then winning the SEC championship, that is good enough.
Yeah. That's where it's like there's good and bad. Like
Sliding scale.
Exactly. It's like I like that. I like that you're not out by that. But then I also like, again, like you were saying, like I wasn't raised that way. Like for me, it was like it was like growing up. Like how many times were we so close, and the one loss kept us out? Like John mentioned, like 02, 05, 07, 12, like all those times, and it's like, well, someday that'll be us, and like all that hurt will be there. And then now it's just so different. It's like, well, now those things wouldn't have mattered like in this format. So it's like, I don't know. So it's like, I kind of miss like the soul crushing loss is almost gone, or the regular season soul crushing loss is gone from college football now, essentially, I think.
And you're not going
to see the complete meltdowns of fans in the stands anymore.
Well, I wouldn't go that far.
The surrender Cobra is like,
no, but you will it's just like people say that, the regular season won't count anymore. I say you could imagine a Duke UNC basketball game. Tell me that regular season doesn't matter. The Auburn Alabama game won't matter. The Georgia Florida game won't matter. If Florida upsets Georgia in in Jacksonville, it will matter. Even if Georgia does make it to the playoffs, because everyone's like, oh, this is going to just kill the regular season. I'm like, no. Aren't you a fan? Don't you know how you can forward this over somebody for 365 days?
True.
This is how it goes. I mean, heck, if Auburn hadn't screwed up twice, Alabama wouldn't have made it. The last 2 years or 2 out of the last 3 years.
Yeah.
Hey, run out of bounds, or stay in bounds and don't run out of bounds. And all of a sudden, it's a completely different ball game. That affected the entire outcome of the season. So the regular games do matter. And I don't think they are as do or die, And I mean, a lot of these teams, they lose that one game in September. They know they're done.
Yeah.
How do you follow it anymore after that? How do you care? If you're UNC and you've got, you lose twice, you lose to Clemson and FSU. All right, we're done.
Yeah.
But now it's like, oh, well, we're one of the 2 lost teams. Maybe we can make it as 11 or 12,
Yeah, you lose the SEC championship game. Now your consolation prize is another home game.
Yeah, exactly. So it's a brand new world. It's going to take some getting used to. But I think from the team standpoint, getting used to having those microphones, the communication systems is going to be.
Yeah.
Somebody's going to figure out a way. The Glenn Schumans of the world, he was called a kind of a savant today by Travaris Robinson, referred to him as Rain Man. Lane Kiffin, who's an idea guy. There's a lot of people who are very innovative, and somebody's going to figure out a way that they can use this technological allowance to their advantage that nobody's seen yet.
Right.
It's coming.
There's also the counter argument there is that it could give quarterbacks too much to think about. Like they're used to getting the call in, and there's no noise in their head. And you're talking about like, hey, remember this? Like, can you just imagine yourself as a first year quarterback, true freshman quarterback coming into this environment now?
My question is it going to get rid of the huge like tarps on the sideline that the coaches use to block the signals? Like, are those still needed?
I could see them still using it because they like to have the false signals.
Okay. That was fair enough. I was kind of sometimes they get in the way on TV, so I was kind of hoping they'd be gone.
Yeah, you still have to signal it into the rest of the team.
The rest of the squad.
They don't all have the helmets. I mean, they don't all have the mic. So especially on defense. You're going to have to, call your formations and, your personnel groupings to your defense because it's only one guy. They're not huddling up each time.
Wishful thinking on my part,
Yeah.
I guess.
It's so ugly looking.
It is obnoxious.
It really is.
So John mentioned the consolation prize of losing the SEC championship. You get a home game. In your opinion, Roddy, would you, like it doesn't have to be career smart, like whoever, like your SEC coach, it's like, it's almost at this point where, like, where do you want to finish? Like right now I'm feeling like third because divisionless SEC, third place feels like a really good spot to land, honestly.
When they first came out with that, I'd mentioned that either on Twitter or the dog vent or something, and I had a bunch of people call me some very unique names. They had a unique take on it, and then when they started thinking about it, they're like, "Oh wait, you're right." And
Yeah.
I'm like, well, hey, would be the first time, but just that idea of why go beat yourself up in this, and in other words, you have to go play a much tougher team at a neutral location, hopefully to get a bye. But if you lose, you could be, hell, you might drop out, or now you have to go play at someone else's house.
Yeah,
or maybe
now you got to go
get
to the road.
but you've still played an extra game. So to me, the value of going and playing the SEC, and I know Kirby will say, "Hey, we love that game. I want to be SEC champs. I've got more, it's harder to win an SEC championship than it is a national championship." Okay. But I just don't. To me, I like the idea of being 3 or 4 and looking at some of those other teams. So if you're 3, you play what, 8 or 9? They play 9, right? So one plays 12 or whatever. No, there's
no one. Yeah, so it's five. Five plays 12.
Yeah, 5 plays 12. So if you're 3 and in the thing, so you're maybe 5, 6, or 7. You're playing, 12, 11, or 10.
Yeah.
Give me that instead of an SEC championship game and have my guys and yeah, that could be a tough game, but it's definitely not going to be as tough as playing Alabama or Ole Miss or Texas.
Yeah. I mean, being the number 5 seed is actually going to be pretty sweet because you're going to host a home game against, like last year it would have been Liberty. Like it's going to be that, it's going to be like that, the 5th ranked conference champion or whatever. So,
right. I'm for that. But at the same time, there's something about being number 1. Kirby will never not want to play in that game and be number 1 and make everybody. He's the hunter, so he won't be playing to do that. But again, it's the consolation. Georgia has to play 3 of the top 6 best teams in the nation. The poll came out: Texas, Alabama, Ole Miss, 4, 5, and 6. You have to play 3 of the top 6 teams, all of them on the road.
Yep. Yeah.
If you can survive that gauntlet, you should just be named SEC champs without having to play the SEC title game and get your thing. And imagine you might have to play one of those twice.
Yeah.
So
doesn't Florida have a pretty brutal schedule this year too?
Yeah,
but they're not going to run the
Someone
table.
said, how do you put together a schedule that gets rid of your coach?
Yeah, have Florida the second half of what Florida's got. That'll cure that real quick. But that's the idea: is you're going to be facing these teams on the road. Then you got to face one of them in Atlanta, and maybe one of them again in the playoffs. And that is a brutal stretch. But we went to practice today. Spent last Thursday looking at the offense. Today we looked at the defense. If anybody can win it, it's this Georgia team. They are loaded across the board. I mean, you look at the outside linebackers. Georgia's not had great outside linebacker play. Definitely not last year.
Yeah.
But if you look at them and you see Gabe Harris and Samuel Mpemba and Michael Williams is working out with them, and you're like, wow, Damon Wilson, wow, yeah, JJA looks unreal. Quintavious Johnson, the freshman wearing 33, looks unreal. I'm like, wait, 99 and 33, you guys are true freshmen? They look like NFL All-Pros. I mean, those guys are insane. Jalen Walker, who's kind of goes in between, in number 10 on your chart, he's an inside linebacker who also plays outside linebacker. He looked small. He's a big dude. But amongst those other outside linebackers, he looked much, much smaller. I'm like, this is Georgia. This is maybe one of Georgia's more questionable positions. Is the outside linebacker room. My God, listen, the inside linebackers are all freaks. You've got 4 ridiculously good but inexperienced cornerbacks. I'm like, this team is now the defensive line's a question, of course, but I mean, just looking at them on the hoof, I mean, they look phenomenal. But I'm thinking if anybody in the nation has a better amalgamation of players, I would be stunned. I know Ohio State's purchased a lot of guys. Ole Miss went out and bought a lot of guys. But top to bottom, so let's say 1 to 88. I'd put Georgia's squad up against anybody's. Schedule doesn't do them any favors, but if anybody could get through it unscathed or at least in a good position to win it all, I'll put Georgia up against anybody.
Man, that was yummy.
delicious.
And that's the defense. The offense
preview.
is better than the defense. So, let's look at this real quick. So Tate Ratledge, we had mentioned in the summer in some of our notes that he was working at center a little bit because Georgia needs a backup center.
Yeah.
So Jared Wilson is your center, maybe the fastest offensive lineman Georgia's had in many, many years. This guy can absolutely fly, but he's replacing Cedric Van Pran. Now, we know Cedric Van Pran's been a 2-year leader, heart and soul of this Georgia team. It's tough to replace a guy like that, but he'll come in and he knows how to make the right calls, and you can do some interesting pulls with him. You have Georgia pulls its guards all the time, sometimes a tackle, but you can do a center guard, a CG tackle, a pull, which is going to be absolute fun to run behind. The left side of your line, you have Ernest Green, who's a first-round draft pick and left tackle. And beside him is Micah Morris, who may be one of the strongest offensive linemen I've ever covered. We're talking 30-plus years. He's just a people mover. He's one of those big cat diesels, and just shoves people out of the way. Dylan Fairchild's a state champion wrestler who's also could start anywhere in the nation. And then you got Tate Ratledge, who's the other guard who is all, first team all SEC. So you got 3 guards, 2 spots. And now you're thinking, well, Jared's been banged up, the center. Let's put Tate Ratledge in there. What does this look like? All-American guard playing center, 2 of the best guards in the nation playing guards, first-round talent on the left side at tackle, and Xavier Truss, who's been at Georgia for 47 years. That's just
that's an accurate assessment.
And here's the thing, and Tate, Xavier looks good. He slimmed down. I'm like, wow, he kind of reminds me how Broderick Jones looked his final year. This is the money year for Xavier Truss. If he's going to get drafted, this is the year. So you've got that offensive line, and it's multiple guys deep. You've got the 5 behind them are really talented. Keep an eye on Jamal Merriweather.
There's a really big offensive lineman, right? He just got hurt, right?
Well, when you say really big, that doesn't really narrow it down.
6'7", 300 something pounds.
So you're saying one of the smaller guys. So they got a bunch of 6'8" guys over there, and then the other day there's a guy named Jazir Jackson, true freshman. He's 6'10". He was
6'10". Okay, that's right.
6'10", 345 pounds, who didn't play high school football. He played in like 8th grade, but played basketball. He was a center. He declared for the NBA draft, didn't get drafted. Now he's playing football for Georgia. That's just, I'd let him off the bus first. 6'10". He's the only guy who could stand next to Marius Mims and make Marius look smaller. And Marius Mims is maybe the biggest guy I've ever covered. But that's who they have over there. That offensive line's nuts. And then you see Trevor Etienne, Georgia hasn't had a back like him in some time. Nate Frazier, true freshman, who's going to be ridiculous. Go ahead.
Hearing a lot about him.
Buy your number 3 jerseys now, or if you got that Gurley one, get that.
Recycle those Gurley jerseys.
Recycle that one, bring it back.
Maybe it's autographed.
Branson Robinson is healthy. Rod Robinson looks better than he did last year. He might have had a little bit of pudginess about him, but Branson Robinson, the state champion weightlifter, might not be the most jacked dude in that room. Rod Robinson might be. So
yeah. Branson is like cleared, right?
Yeah, he's
That's
out there
crazy.
running. He's cleared. He scored 2 touchdowns in a national title game, and he's running 4th.
Yeah.
He's number
Yeah.
4 on your depth chart. Now, will he be 4 for long? I don't know. Of course, you got Cash Jones and
Cash money.
Chauncey Bowens, who was here in the spring, and of course Dwight Phillips, who has world-class track speed. I mean, that running back room is absolutely nuts. Of course, you got 100 different wide receivers to throw to, some good tight ends. This all, and Carson Beck is your Heisman Trophy leading candidate.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm just saying that as impressive as the defense was to see today, that offense looks ridiculous. Now, again, they still have to play one of the toughest schedules in America.
Mm-hmm.
No matter how good you are, the ball, as we saw against Alabama, the ball can bounce the wrong way one time. One guy can get hurt. It changes your game plan.
Yeah. The refs miss the
anything can
ball to
happen.
hit the ground, whatever.
But again, if you go to every fall camp and you look at the 1 to 44, Georgia's going to beat them all. And we were told this last year. We had an NFL guy came by and he's like, I went to Clemson yesterday, and I'm here at Georgia today. They look nothing alike. Georgia,
Yeah.
head and shoulders above them. But it's the way Georgia used to be against Alabama, against the Ohio States, when Clemson had all those first round guys over there, with
The Trevor Lawrence's
defensive players that were just ridiculous. And again, Kirby Smart's first year. I told the story about going to the Ole Miss game when Georgia was being beat 31-0 in the first half. And I was out there with my intern Paul, who we stuffed into the back of a Charger. He's like 6'4". And I went to get a rental card and like, oh yeah, let's get that Charger. We stuffed him in the back seat, poor kid. And we drive all the way to the Ole Miss game. And he's died in the back seat because he needs to smoke, and we won't let him out. And he's folded into a pretzel. And he's on the sideline. He's grumpy because he really needs to smoke. We're outside the stadium. And I'm like, hey, look at those tight ends. Those guys are gigantic. And you're looking at Ole Miss. Roddy, that's their wide receivers. I'm like, oh. So I wasn't used to big wide receivers, the DK Metcalfs of the world, they're just guys who are just absolute monsters. I'm like, oh yeah, Georgia's going to get killed. And they did. And again, and this is the Brandon Cablano, Greg Pike, of the world. Big, talented offensive linemen. But now you've got the Micah Morrises of the world. You've got your Tate Ratledges of the world. You've got your 5-star, guys all up and down the line. And Kirby's gotten bigger in the middle. That was, Georgia had that under Richt. They definitely had it under Coach Donnan. Mm-hmm. But when they had the lines, they didn't have the skill players. When they had skill players, they didn't have the lines.
Yeah.
Mark Richt's been able to put it all together due to the support of the administration. And I don't want to say a blank check, but at least a lot more checks than what he had. So right now, I mean, yes, they lost last year, but again, how many regular season? They lost one game in the regular season in 2 years, 3 years?
Yeah. I mean, the last regular season loss was what, at Florida?
At
COVID
Florida
year. I mean, if we're throwing out SEC championship as a regular season, so yeah, it's nuts.
Yeah. I mean, it's been a minute. So, and a lot of people are like, oh, well, when they lost Alabama, they kind of thought the magic was over. I'm like, those guys most of them are coming back. You lost 8. You lost them to the portal, but there's very few guys that you lost to the portal that you're like, damn,
I'm convinced if anybody leaves in the portal, Kirby didn't necessarily want him. I think the only exception there would be 80.
Yeah, there are certain guys that, you're right. There's maybe like 1 or 2.
Yeah.
They really fought to keep. They didn't want to lose Bear, but there's high drama there. They were happy to see Brent Cox too. Like, see you, Brent.
Yeah.
There's certain guys, and others have other guys they didn't know just can't play. And they're like, okay, and they'll tell them, you can stay. You don't need that. People say, well, they push them through the portal. No. Mm-hmm. But if you're honest with them and say, look, I don't see you ever starting here. You'll be a great member of the scout team. well, you keep getting your degree here, but I'm gonna be honest with you, buddy. I I got three guys ahead of you at at boundary corner, and at field corner, there's four guys. So I don't ever, you're a cornerback, you can help us, but I don't see you playing. And then all of a sudden, your fourth string cornerback transfers to Tulane.
Yeah.
No harm, no foul. It allows you to bring somebody else in. Um, some guys are a bigger headache than they're worth, and you let those guys go as well. But one of the things that that Kirby Smart won't do is give a kid a ton of money to come out of high school to Georgia. He would rather keep that war chest for the guys that are thinking about going somewhere else and saying, hey, I know you've got a nice offer from USC, Michael Williams, and we want you to stay here. And then all of a sudden, it's like three different guys put their name in the portal and then came back.
Yeah.
What was it? Daniel Harris and Julian Humphrey and a couple others. I mean, your two starting quarterbacks were both about to transfer away.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Two guys who could be your starting guy. It's going back and forth. But just like you said, if a guy puts his name in the portal, either they let him or they didn't want him, or he's a bigger pain in the butt than he is a good teammate. So Kirby fights to keep his proven guys. He did get mad. I think it was the other five-star cornerback, the kid, was it Singletary, Jaheim Singletary, or the kid that went to Miami. One guy came in and he had played his freshman year, or didn't play much his freshman year, but was expected to have a big sophomore year and then transfers. And Kirby, you could tell he was mad about that because he's like, look, you come here, we train you.
Yeah.
And just as you're about to blow up, just as there's room for you, you go somewhere else.
Wasn't the kid that went to Florida State?
Very well could be. I'm not sure which one it was, but it was somebody who he was annoyed that they were leaving after their first or second year, mainly because now the opportunity to play was presenting itself and they went somewhere else. So like, look, we taught you how to practice. We taught you all the techniques. We developed you into being good. And now you're going to go and use all that to go somewhere else. It's one of my pet peeves in this business. I have a lot of former interns or former staffers that have worked for me personally, and I teach them how to do the job, and I teach them all the tricks. This is how we break news. This is what we search for.
Yeah.
And then they go and they get another job, but I'm happy for them. I'll even write them a letter of recommendation, but then they come back and work in our market. I'm like, wait a minute. I taught you how to cover a team. I didn't teach you how to cover Georgia. Now I got to go up against you every day.
Right.
Come on, man. That is tacky.
You need to get Kirby to give you some of that NIL money so you can keep him. So I know like the portal take it or go. What, John? You have some?
Oh, nothing. I was going to say, I think it was Jermaine Johnson.
That was linebacker. With the portal, I one of the guys that I am curious about, like with Colby Young coming in from Miami, like because he's a bigger guy, right? I mean, like, could this be like another like Lawrence Cager type situation coming in from Miami?
He looks about that size. Let me see what they got listed at Colby. Where was he at? Number 8, I believe. Yeah. 6'3", 215.
Okay.
You look at it, you see a Dom Lovett and Arian Smith. Now Dylan Bell, of course, is jacked, but he's not that size. And then you see Colby Young, and you look at London Humphreys and Michael Jackson from USC. When you see number 8 walk
Can't
up,
beat it.
You're like, good Lord.
Yeah.
Who the hell's that?
Nice.
He's a giant. He's a big boy. Again, I mean, he was running with a second or third team the other day, so we don't know that he'll come in and have that Cager effect. But
yeah,
damn sure looks like him. He has huge hands, big arms, big body, big target to throw to. But it's tough. I mean, are you going to take out Dylan Bell? Nope. Dylan Bell's going to have a big season. Dom Lovett will be all SEC, in my opinion. I think this is the big money year for Dom Lovett. I was expecting Rod Thomas to also have a huge year, but now it's going to be Arian Smith, Dylan Bell, and Dom Lovett. And of course, you got Anthony Evans, the third, who is lightning quick.
Yeah.
I think when you get down into the red zone, or you're trying to hit that square out, I'm like, give me give me the red zone. Give me that corner fade with a body that size.
Right.
Kind of the way I wish they'd use Darnell Washington more. Oh my, give me that guy, especially if you can get him on a cornerback or some, or a linebacker. Let the two of them jump up, and I'm just gonna make a jump ball. As I throw it, I know it's gonna go out of bounds, or he's gonna have to snatch it out of the air.
Yeah.
Let him just go and get it. But we talked to the folks in Miami, they're like, he's really good. But then the folks at USC and Vandy said the same thing about those wide receivers. So Georgia does have three good transfer wide receivers. How much they'll play with what Georgia has ahead of them, I don't know. But Colby,
you mentioned Darnell Washington. We haven't even touched on the tight end position. We got Urasek coming in too.
Yeah,
he's thicker in the neck than I expected. That was a guy that we were kind of thinking, because of how much he was catching the ball and the numbers he put up, that was kind of a bigger Pierce Spurlock. No, he's definitely thicker. You can keep him in line, and that's what I love that Georgia's done for the last few years. I thought that was when they were running the 12 personnel, and they'd have that wedge on one side with Darnell and Brock and one wide receiver, and you're like, I don't know how to defend this, because if they run behind it, you got Darnell and Brock Bowers blocking, beside Amarius Mims or Warren McClendon. Great. And what are you going to do with those guys on that side? Or they go to the other side and run over there. But now you could kind of do that same thing with Delp and Urasek. And of course, Lawson Lucky's is physical. So, but again, nobody has that size that those two guys did. So, getting a nice pass catching tight end is great. But to me, you already have that in Delp. You need somebody who can stay in and confuse, not only say confuse, but make it tougher so that you don't know exactly what they're going to do. And if you have Ben Urasek in line, he's tight to the tight end. Okay, he's probably chipping. He's probably, picking up a 7 technique, 9 technique guy who's trying to come around the edge. But he's also probably peeling out into the flat on a sluggo or something.
So, Radi, you've been around the program long enough. Like, who's on the depth chart right now that could come out and surprise everybody? Like Brock Bowers. So in the lead up to the season, we heard a lot about Brock Bowers from the practice. Is there a breakout guy that you're hearing a lot about that is not really getting a whole lot of like national coverage?
Well, it's tough because he's got two great players in front of him, but Raylan Wilson at the inside linebacker spot. I mean, can you beat out Smile Munden? No. Are you going to beat out CJ Allen? No. But if one of those guys isn't out there for some reason, keep an eye on Raylan Wilson. I heard great things about him. Of course, I don't know that you can keep KJ Bolden off the field, and that's not a shot against Dan Jackson. Georgia's safeties are required to know a lot, to identify a lot, to do it quickly. And it is, I will say this about Malachi Starks, the fact that he was able to go out and play his first game as a true freshman is just freakish. I mean, Tavares Robinson was asked about that today, and he's like, look, if you screw up as a defensive lineman, you got a linebacker to back you up, and maybe he can make the play. If you mess up as a linebacker, you got a safety to back you up. But whenever we, being the safety coach, make a mistake, it's 7 points. I'm like, yeah. And you look at the offenses they're going up against, you're going up against Kalen DeBoer. That man's offensively brilliant. Same with Ole Miss. That's going to be tough, Clemson, they've always had great offenses. It would be tough for a KJ Bolden to get out there. And again, he's smart, quick kid. The fact that Malachi did it is almost, to me, the exception to the rule. But KJ gives you a athletic skill set that is rare. So I could definitely see him coming on and doing his stuff. And again, you would think, well, how can any running back get on the field when you've got Trevor Etienne, who's was one of the best running backs in the SEC? You've got Rod Robinson, who looks so good in the spring. Now he's catching the ball, and that was kind of the knock on him coming in. Was that, well, he's kind of a downhill between the tackles guy. Now he's got light hands and sure hands, and then of course Branson Robinson, being one of the strongest players on the team. How could your number 4 guy, a Nate, or number 5 guy, Nate Frazier, break through all that. But I'm like, again, talk about guys you're hearing about.
Yeah.
Him, Urasek is another one.
Okay.
And I don't know that anybody at that outside linebacker spot has made a name for themselves. I mean, we talk about Michael Williams, right?
Right.
But you had 2 5-stars come in last year. That Sam and Pimba, Damon Wilson, Gabe Harris. Which one of those guys is going to be that Azeez Ojulari? I remember telling people when we were in New Orleans and that game that Azeez kind of blew up. We were doing practice reports, and we were doing a little nugget called Live from Bourbon Street. And each day I would talk to some of the people who were at practice, and they tell me some of the things that happened in practice. And I remember putting in my notes, guys, Azeez Ojulari is going to play in this game. And he's going to have a big game. And most people are like, who? He's been hurt all year. He hadn't played.
Yeah.
And Azeez goes out there and just decimates everybody. And again, I'm not trying to say, hey, I'll get credit for it as if I was a savant, but it's because what a GA told me. So I'm just relaying it without using his name so he doesn't get fired. And he's like, he says they don't have a plan for Azeez because we haven't played him on. And so I put it in my notes, something to watch. Well, which one is Gabe Harris Azeez? Is Damon Wilson? Is it Sam and Pimba? Is it Quintavious Johnson? Is it JJA?
Yeah.
Who is that? Who's that guy that gets the sacks?
Yeah, I mean, because it's something we've basically been missing since Adam Anderson was dismissed. I mean, we haven't really had it since, not at that level.
You're right. I mean, I don't know if that was a curse that hit the Bulldogs, when Adam got arrested.
I mean, I think that you can't talk about that.
With Leonard Floyd.
Yeah,
right.
Exactly.
You can't talk about those guys without addressing the fact that you had Jordan Davis and Jalen Carter eating attention along the interior as well. So I think that if you can find someone like those guys that can just eat space and command defenders, it frees up someone on the outside.
Yeah, I mean, I think Georgia, if they had a good zero technique, a good 3-eye who commands double teams like those guys did.
Right.
And Namandi Ogboka, I was looking at him today, number 95. He's thick, but again, it's tough to come in as a true freshman and play the zero technique.
Mm-hmm.
You line up across from a Tate Ratledge, and you're thinking, I'm gonna take on Tate and Micah Morris. I'm gonna make them double team me. The hell if that's so. Tate Ratledge is gonna be able to jump across your face, drive you out of the hole, and now all of a sudden, Micah's climbing to that Mike linebacker and taking him out of the play. That's a 40-yard gain right up the gut. So
yeah,
you're supposed to take on 2, and you get single-handedly manhandled. It's tough for a freshman to come in there. So maybe it's you ask who's that guy on the depth chart that could really blow up. Don't know about any of the guys I mentioned if they will do it, but I know where they need it. They need a Jordan Hall. They need a Jaw Jarrett. They need somebody on that interior line.
The interior defensive line.
Not the sevens. You need an interior lineman who is a problem.
Mm-hmm.
You need Deion Walker at Kentucky. You got to have somebody who's just like, how the hell are we going to stop that guy? Because if we don't double team him, he's getting to it.
What does Coach Donnan tell you about the defensive line? Because I'm going to harken back to earlier in the conversation talking about Donnan's ability to identify talent. I remember distinctly in your conversations with him in the lead up to when Jalen Carter basically committed. I remember him distinctly talking about Jalen Carter was going to be a problem before he even got on campus.
Yeah, he wasn't even at UGA. He's like, this guy they got in this class is Jalen Carter. How the hell do y'all have him 56? What are y'all drinking? I don't make the rankings, coach. Yeah, and that's why the Andy Reeds of the world call him, and ask him about, hey, Georgia has him come over to. He can't talk to me about it. But
okay, so he can't talk.
Camps and practices all the time, and they all ask him questions because they had a camp, a recruiting camp the other day before their big cookout. The day before, they had a bunch of guys come in, and they asked him to come over and watch their quarterbacks throw. And He's like a guy at the horse track. He's at Keeneland, and he's like, all right. He watches the horses walk around, and then goes, "Give me the number 3 horse in the 7 race to the show." I mean, it's just if the man can do it. It's freakish what he does. And again, he picked that one. He told us Jordan Davis we had him as a 4-star. Everybody else had him as 3-star. He's like, Jordan Davis is going to be a monster. He's like, oh, and what he doesn't do on air is tell you all the guys that aren't going to be any good. He's like,
we'll have to stop recording for that conversation.
Yeah, and he's like that guy couldn't hit water if he fell out of a boat. And sure enough, then all of a sudden that guy's in the transfer portal, and we're like, Georgia lost so and so, and you don't see a follow-up story on how bad it stings. Georgia, we're like, coach wrote him off the air, so. You won't see us crying over a kid leaving. The coach is like, no big loss.
Right?
Yeah.
He's not mean about it. He's just like, there's 22 spots.
Coach Donnan he's a national treasure. I say.
But that's the problem, is there's not a Jordan Davis on that defensive line yet. Again, remember, it took Jordan his first year to become Jordan Davis, but Jalen Carter, he saw that. While he was still in high school, you just watch his tape. This guy's different. But, where's your Devontae Wyatt?
Yeah,
right.
You've got some Tramel Walters over there. You've got some Jonathan Ledbetters. But where is your difference maker on the defensive front? And right now, I don't know that you have it. And you'll still win most of your games without it. But you're not, I don't say Georgia was guaranteed, but you can run a completely different defense if you have that talent up front. It changes your whole scheme. Just like if you have one weak link in your offensive line, changes everything you do. Georgia loses Amarius Mims in the championship game against Alabama. Our game plan has to change.
Yeah. Yeah. And like you said, we were able to win every game because we didn't have that guy interior defensive line last year either. You were able to win every game but that one, with that. We were able to mask it except for then.
Yeah, it was the same 2 years prior to that, or 2 or 3. Coach Don is like, we've got serious problems in the secondary. And Georgia's winning every game. And he's like, I'm just telling you. And each week when we talk about the game before we do our watch along, because we do a YouTube show where he watches the game, I watch it with him. We have a camera on us so that you can watch the Georgia Clemson game on your television, then on your laptop or iPad or phone, you have us on YouTube. And he calls the plays before they're going to happen. It's freakish because he's watching the formation.
It's absolutely great content.
This is going to be a run into the boundary, and sure enough, it's a run into the boundary. I'm like, how the hell did you know that? He's like, how did you not? Did you see him lined up? And I'm like, and I go, yeah, okay, I see. I have no idea. And he's like, if the quarterback keeps it here on this pitch, he'll be running for days. And of course he doesn't. And it's a 5-yard loss. He's like, and then they show the replay, and I'm like, damn, if he had kept it, he would have been running for days.
Oh man, this I can tell already. This is one of those Stetson runs where we're just like, God, just keep the ball.
Stuff like that. And he sees it. And he's like, I sat next to him. We didn't do a watch along for the Alabama game, but the minute Amarius Mims went down, we were in a suite. Okay, so one of our readers at UGA Sports is a money guy. And he invited Coach Don and me to his suite in Mercedes-Benz Stadium. It's an amazing suite. It's the second nicest suite. The only nicer suite is the one owned by Arthur Blank.
Right.
Lobster rolls, man. The food, the drinks, it was nuts. I've never lived like that in my life. It was amazing. But I'm sitting next to Coach, and he's nervous. He's so nervous. And the game's going pretty good, and Coach is like, okay, we can do this, we can do that. And he's just talking. And then Amarius Mims gets hurt, and it's like you told him his dog died.
Yeah.
I'm like, but hey, it was one guy, Coach, and he was missing half the season. We'll be fine.
I was there with him.
But he knew that, Brock wasn't healthy and that Ladd wasn't healthy. Just like Nick Saban said after the game, he's like, yeah, we knew they weren't all that. We weren't really worried about them. And once Mims went down, the entire game plan had to change. And again, so coach sees all that stuff, and he will tell you, who he thinks is good and who he thinks is bad. But 3 years ago, he's like, our secondary's terrible. Coach, he's like, yeah, and it was masked game after game after game after game until Ohio State decided to get bigger. It's like when you were talking about it being exposed, Ohio State did it, and he looks at me like, "What I tell you?" And it was the first time I was doubting him because I'm like, "Wait a minute, you got a couple, guys are going to get drafted out of the secondary.
Mm-hmm.
Their numbers look great." And he's like, "Well, yeah, their numbers look good because we're so good up front. It masks a weak secondary."
Yeah.
And each week leading up to it's like, this Kentucky quarterback, he's really good. He's going to unmask our secondary. This quarterback's really good. He's going to unmask our secondary. This offensive coordinator is really good. He's going to unmask our secondary. It wasn't until they faced Bryce Young. It was like, there it is. He called it all year long because he's such a good talent evaluator right now. And we'll ask him about this on our show tomorrow. Like, okay. And he gave the 30,000 foot view last week about, what the team looks like. But there isn't that game changer on the defensive front. And if there's any weakness, it's going to probably be there and at tight end. And it's nothing shot against, Lawson Lucky and, Oscar Delp. And
it's tough to come after Brock Bowers.
Well, not only Brock, but Darnell.
And Darnell, yeah.
Look at how different Georgia was without Darnell last year. Now without Brock, you have mere mortals at tight end. Good ones, but not, you don't have Mackey Award winners.
Right. I mean, Darnell was basically like an extra tackle on the end of the line.
And I've looking back over the years, I've always been kind of frustrated by how many guys only played 2 years at Georgia. A lot of guys that they would play maybe a little either through injury or suspension, like Alec Ogletree. Alec Ogletree played 3 years. He got hurt twice and suspended once, missed 11 games. That's an entire season. So literally he only played like 2 seasons at Georgia. A lot of guys, that came in or transfer in, play 2 years. Jarvis Jones, 2 years. Some of your best players, Noshawn banged up, played the equivalent of 2 years. And then a lot of, your redshirted his freshman.
I think Rich says that was just the greatest mistake.
2 years
Too soon.
Yeah. So, but the point is, there's just been a lot of guys who you haven't. You're like, yeah, and then they go play 10 years in the NFL, and we get back to that story or that question. Why doesn't Georgia have 5 titles with all these guys in the NFL?
Yeah.
Well, they weren't here long enough. Justin Houston was 2 years.
Yeah.
When I look at Darnell Washington, I'm like, it feels like he was only here 2 years, because at some point Darnell should have had 50 targets.
Yeah,
because he had Brock Bowers on the.
Again, having them together wins you a title, but if you'd had them staggered,
yeah.
And again, I have a
We
weekly.
preaching to the choir here.
I got a weekly tweet about the tight ends. It's kind of a running joke on Twitter. Every time a tight end catches the ball, and this goes back to Isaac Nada and the guy from the Northeast.
Lynch.
Yeah, Arthur Lynch. Going back and back and back. Aaron White. I'm like, please throw to the tight end.
Martrez Milner. Pope.
Throw to the tight end.
Yeah.
And then in a couple years in the Georgia-Florida game, like going into the 1 minute offense right before the half, they need to move the ball. They throw to the tight end 3 times. They move the ball down the field. I'm like, you can do this throughout the game, Cheney. It works at other times. Schottenheimer. You got multiple tight ends over there. You could throw. Anyway, I don't like to second guess the coaches, but I'm a big fan of using tight ends in the college game.
Yeah,
and I do a weekly tweet about the tight ends, and I'm a fan of that position. Those guys are always kind of a riot because they're that in between. They're not the wide receivers, but they're not the offensive linemen. They get banged into a lot. They get the crap knocked out of them. They're usually the dirtiest guys on the field, And I'm
mismatches in many cases.
Yeah.
I'm like, you got Darnell Washington, and you didn't get you saw what happened when he got the ball.
Yeah.
I'm like, just for the sheer thrill of it, give him the ball more.
I mean, he was out there hurdling people.
Yeah, exactly.
Big boy. The big boy
Or
hurdling people.
knocking their souls out of their body with a stiff arm. So.
Yeah. He was impressive. I've got a bit of an off the wall one, or just thinking through, because we've talked about Coach Donnan. I did not know the story of you taking that photo of him. What would 1995 Roddy, who's just taken that photo of Coach Donnan being announced as the new head coach of Georgia, think about the fact that fast forward, you're now doing a watch along with Coach Donnan? Like,
I would have been terrified. Here's the thing. I hate being on camera. I hate the sound of my voice. I can't look at myself.
yeah,
I would have been happy if UGA had actually had a full-time photographer position to work for them. I'd be a 31-year employee of the university, taking all their pictures as a staff photographer, shooting, the first year I started out just trying to promote the university, try to get them good pictures, help them in any way possible. Because I was a student, I wanted to help out.
yeah,
And I could have seen myself being, because I know the guy at Auburn who's been there almost 40 years, and guys at Tennessee and Florida, they're great, guys like that. But I did get a degree to write, so I'm glad I actually use it now. But I wanted nothing more than to take the cover photo for Sports Illustrated.
okay.
And I got into Sports Illustrated a lot. I bought tens of thousands of dollars worth of gear, and I loved it because I love going to games. I love being around the game. I love seeing it and showing people stuff they didn't see on TV. And I look back at some of the stuff I got. The Veron Haynes touchdown pick against Tennessee. This is one of my favorites because it's just an angle that you didn't get to see on television. I think I was the only person that got the picture of David Pollock stripping the ball in the end zone and for scoring a touchdown. It's one of my best pictures. And I was just, everybody else was watching them try to get it out of the end zone. I stayed on the quarterback, and I got David Pollock climbing all over him and then coming out with the ball. One of my lucky shot, but that's what I would have wanted in 1995. I'm like, give me David Pollock and Georgia winning the national title, and that's the cover of the book. That photo's the cover of the book for them winning the title, in 95 or 97, whatever. I've never minded that when you go into the stadium and you see all these pictures on the walls that, I've taken or inside Stegman, hey, look, there's Hope Spivey Shealy, and there's Karen Litchie, there's, K2 Davis, all these, like it didn't have my name on it. I didn't want my name on it. It didn't bother me because I wanted to be behind the camera. I just wanted to share the vision of what I had with UGA.
Yeah.
And now look at where they're at.
I mean, again, that picture in your background there of the stadium, I love doing stuff like that. I would have been happy doing that my whole career.
Yeah.
But that's just, I mean, you can't, there's no way to make a living doing that. So I'm like, there's also the stories that I want to tell the story photographically, but also I learned so much on the inside. I'm like, people don't know any of this stuff. They don't know stuff about Fatone Bauda. They don't know stuff about Jordan Jenkins. They don't know these other things. And I want to tell those stories too. And I would write a little bit for Bulldog Magazine, but we were limited in how much we could put out. There's only so many pages.
Yeah.
And I would turn in, like 27 inches of copy to Martin Arms, and Martin would cut it down to like 7. I'm like, hey, where'd the rest of that story go? He's like, in that room, son of a bitch. So going digital, I could write more, and instead of giving 4 or 5 pictures from a game in a magazine, I could put up a gallery of 300.
Right.
This is awesome. And then I started working for Steve. He's like, yeah, I came over as like a photography, marketing, copy editing, writing guy. And 6 weeks into my tenure, he goes, hey, I'm burned out. I need you to take over. Crap. So all of a sudden I had to do radio, then I had to do TV, and then I went to ESPN and had to do
Yeah.
TV and radio with them. And then I started working for CSS doing a weekly TV show with David Shockley. I never wanted to be on this side of the camera is my long-winded way of saying that. I never wanted to be on camera. I never wanted to hear my own voice. I never wanted to see my own picture. I want to be behind the lens, telling stories, and you can't pay for the house doing that. So I have to be in front of the camera. And if I look at myself and you say, hey, I'm the OG, it's due to attrition. It's not due to talent or quality. It's just due to I'm the last guy standing. I've been around the longest, kind of like a toenail fungus that you can't get rid of. That's me. That's it's not due to quality. It's just longevity. But I have, when I look back at this and I'm like, and I hope to do it, another 30 years. Until they can't wheel my fat ass back into the stadium anymore. My number one, the thing I take the most pride in is not the stories we broke. Yeah, I got Damon Evans fired by, breaking his arrest story. I've gotten other people. I've broken a lot of bad news and I've broken a lot of good news. But what I'll be happiest about is when people meet me and they say, hey, I remember that story. I run into former players, or I ran into Rennie Curran today. And Rennie Curran's like, hey, man, you were always good to me. I appreciate you being a professional. I appreciate all the things you did for me. And I'm like, well, you made me look good because you 3rd and 1 against South Carolina, you jumped over the pile and knocked the ball away, knocked that pass down. I got a photo of it. We ran that on the cover of the Sporting News or something. So you gave me more, but being able to tell Rennie Curran's story, being able to tell Arthur Lynch's story, making fun of Jordan Jenkins and Chris Conley and guys like that. Marlo Herrera, just all the guys I've covered over the years, going back to, I covered, I hate to say it, but I covered Mike Bobo in college. I covered Mike Bobo's kid,
there we go.
Now, I can't tell you the stories I know about Mike Bobo in college, but I did enjoy coaching.
Do they involve Allen's?
Yeah, we did some research a couple of years ago because I remember it happening, and the only thing I could find was a blurb from the Red and Black of when I believe Kirby was with them, but Bobo got arrested like before the Outback Bowl. You were talking about the Outback Bowl before. They're at whatever was the bar behind Allen's back then. I can't remember what it was called. It was like the downstairs of Allen's. But anyways, there's a Red and Black clip about that.
FOX says?
Yes, that's actually what it was. Foxes.
Yeah.
Foxes.
I'll give you another example. Matt Stafford and O'Shawn Marino before the bowl game. We were right after the bowl game. Everybody's wondering, are they going pro?
Mm-hmm.
UGA Sports puts out a story. They're both going pro. Everybody's mad. Hey, we don't want. They didn't say that. They didn't announce that. How do you know? Because everyone did not want it to be true. And I'm like,
yes,
I know because the night before the bowl game, they went out on the town. They snuck out, and they came back to the hotel about 3 or 4 in the morning at the Renaissance Hotel, which is where the team was staying. They were met by a team representative who took the young lady's phone, or maybe she had one of those little disposable cameras, or no, I think she had a digital camera. Went through it, deleted all the pictures, gave her back the camera, put her in a cab, sent her to her house, and got those guys back upstairs because they'd gone out for the kind of their last hurrah together because they both knew they were going pro.
Yeah,
we confirmed it with either Matt Stafford or O'Shawn Marino's aunt. She's like, yeah, and we ran the story.
Yeah.
Sometimes being in the right place at the right time helps, but again, there's fun stories to tell, and there's stuff you can't tell. Having a Georgia player walk into a strip club one time in New Orleans, turn to me and Anthony Dasher and go, "Hey, you're not supposed to be here," But again, also there's been a lot of fun stories. I mean, if you can tell the Brett Thorson story, that's phenomenal, Or heck, even
talk about a player
Luke
that
Ford story.
I wanted to talk to.
As tragic as Luke Ford's story, I'm still mad at the NCAA
Yeah.
Move forward, and the
Yeah.
guys have gone elsewhere. Hell, Reggie Wilkerson, I still keep up with him. I'm still hoping he makes it to the league at some point. Um, there's a lot
Yeah.
of stories you want to tell, and that's the only thing I will bang Kirby Smart on by not letting us talk to the players more. There's a lot of side stories that we don't get to tell the public or that we don't know. And today, when we talked to T. Rob, him talking about Malachi Starks. Now Malachi was getting on to him every day, showing up at 5:30 to run with him in the morning. That's a great story.
Yeah.
There's thousands of those that we'd like to tell that we don't get to.
Yeah.
We got a chance to talk to Tate Ratledge and Lab McConkey last season and hear some of their stories. That I agree. I totally agree with you. Like this, there's the NIL era has allowed a little bit more of that to happen. I feel like you've got,
absolutely.
Organizations like the Players Lounge where they're able to like showcase, player content. And you talked about Brett Thorson, like, man, talk about a character that we probably never would have heard anything about him in the old days. Now in the NIL era, you're able to see a lot more.
Well, if you mean old days by the first 4 or 5 years of Kirby Smart's tenure, then yes. But under Richt, I will say we did get a lot more player access. I'm not trying to complain about that, because
it's okay. You can say it. It's a safe space.
It is what it is, But and also access to some of the. Well, I'll put it to you this way: we didn't know that Devontae Wyatt was as fantastic of an interview as he was until his last game. We're like, how the hell have you kept this guy away from us? Because it wasn't like that when I covered him in high school. He and I chewed some of the same dirt, of course, 30 years apart in like the Glenwood Hills area in Decatur. It's a rough area. And, going to his high school, and I'm like, oh, yeah, this is not elite. This is hard packed red clay that these kids get tackled on. And that's why they have those elbow scars and knee scars and stuff from get tackled and that stuff. Yeah. And he wasn't as charming and engaging back then. Then we get him for like the playoffs the open media days. And we're like, Devontae Wyatt is hilarious. Man, we would have loved to interview this guy all the time. So,
who's someone you want to interview now?
Now, I'll take Jalen Walker every time I can get him. Just because he's absolutely engaging. I'd like to talk to JJA. If again, freshman, tough to get to. I'd like to hear Ellis Robinson's story. I mean, every time we spoke to him, it was about, okay, hey, you're the number one cornerback. He didn't do a ton of interviews, but he committed to Georgia early. He had a lot of people go after him, a ton. And in this NIL era, kind of the Caleb Downs flipping last second type world. Yeah. He stuck with him. Very similar to AJ Green. Okay. Top guy, picked him, stick with him. He had more opportunities to flip than even AJ Green did. It's like, no, I'm sticking with him. I'd like to get okay, now you're here. You can tell us the whole story of what happened in your recruitment. Right. I'd like to know about some of those last minute deals. Who talked to you? Now, here's the thing. We can get access to some of those players sometimes, but sometimes they don't tell you what they've
been trained.
It's really tough sometimes, Yeah. But I'd like to hear from them. I'd also like to, Samuel and Pimba, okay, year two.
Yeah.
Where are you at? Damon Wilson, who's very engaging. Damon, what can we expect from you? Hell, I'd like to talk to Gunner again. It's been a minute. Gunner's a horrible interview, though. God, he is so because he's a coach's son, and he's there through and through. He says nothing, Ryan Puglisi's a riot, though. So
nice.
Have you ever asked Tate Ratledge about his favorite Halloween candy?
I have not.
You should. That's a good conversation. Those are the hard hitting questions that we asked him.
No, see, and that's the thing that frustrates me is because we would do an interview every time that I would have Jordan Jenkins come down to do TV. It's like all the media guys would go into one room and do the player interviews, and then I would set up with the TV cameras, and that way the UGA sports writers could ask a bunch of questions of the guys in the media room and in the written room, and then they'd come into TV and we could ask different questions. So that way we got more questions asked, because we split up. Nobody else was doing that. All the print guys were in one room. All the TV stations were in the thin door room, that fake area there. And I would go down there with a camera set up and we'd put it out in video. Nobody else was doing it. And every time that I would interview Jordan Jenkins, I was like, "Hey, Jordan," he goes, "Hey, Roddy, I hate you." He said on air every time. Or he'd answer my question, go, and yes, I hate you, Roddy. It's just, and everyone would look at me like, "What, dude?" They didn't understand it was a joke. But the thing is, I had spoken to him so many times in his recruitment, because he was very good about his dad Ronald made sure that he's, after a visit, he spoke to the media. And we would meet in the parking lot across the school, or across the street from Butts-Mehre, because you can't interview them on campus. So we'd walk from the Butts-Mehre across the street and talk on the sidewalk next to that elementary school. So technically we were off the property by 7 feet. The point is, hanging out with these guys so long. Right now, if I were to talk to Micah Morris, I feel like we need to talk football. Expectations. What have you improved on? What do you need to improve on? Talk to me about this coach. Talk to me about your position. And we don't have enough time to move on into. In other words, it feels like a wasted question. What's your favorite candy? Who are you listening to on your who's on your pregame mixtape?
For what it's worth, I want to know those.
Who are you voting for? Sorry.
I don't necessarily care about who you're voting for, but for what it's worth, there's definitely an audience out there. Like those are I want to hear about. I want to get to know the players. That to me is.
But if sometimes you only get a guy like one time, like, okay, have we spoken to Carson Beck? Starting quarterback.
Right.
There might be some fun stuff that, hey, what about that Catherine girl? How's your dating life going?
Yes.
Which one of you makes more money? Who pays for the date?
Pays for the date.
Maybe that's where he got his Lamborghini. Okay.
Yeah. Hey, what's the fastest you've driven that thing? Have you taken it out to Atlanta Motor Speedway? Well, what was the interest rate you got on it if you're leasing? Fun stuff like that. But normally we're like, okay, what do you think of the in-game headsets? What do you think of this? What is? Yeah. When you only get them for 10 minutes, and that may be the only time you speak to them, asking them some of the more fun questions, you're like, it almost feels like a waste. It's like, this may be the only time I talk to this guy all year.
Right.
Talking about Carson Beck, can you rewind a few years ago? Do you think
when he sucked?
Yeah. Can we rewind a few years ago? Because you've been around the program a long time. You probably heard some of the stories, right? Like you know a lot more than what everybody does. If you were to tell that Radi what's going on now, what would you think?
The week that he didn't get to start against UAB and they gave Stetson the start or something like that,
Longest week of my life. If I had to talk to, if 3 years ago, Radi was talking to current Radi, older Radi would say, "You must be eating those gummies from the Road Shop." One of our sponsors makes THC gummies, and we're like, "How many of those things have you had tonight, man?" So, that week, so JT Daniels gets hurt. We break that news. And we're like, he's not going to play. So first we break the news that he has an issue. Then we break the news he's not going to play. And then all of a sudden everyone's reporting that Carson Beck, because remember Kirby had said he's our number 2 in camp. Because somebody specifically asked him, who's your number 2 quarterback? And Kirby uncharacteristically says Carson Beck's our number 2.
Answer.
Yeah. Like, oh, wow, okay, that's unusual. And so everyone reports that. His high school coach tells everybody that he's going to start. And then I go out there and report that Stetson Bennett's going to be the starter. And nobody else did. I knew I was right.
Yeah.
But things can change. So in other words, you could have a situation where on Friday morning, the offensive coordinator wakes up and goes, no, I think we need to go with Carson. I think we need to go with Carson.
Yeah.
Even though we've told Stetson he's going to start. And we haven't told Carson yet. And Carson actually came out recently, I think maybe at one point, maybe at SEC Media Days, I think he was asked about it, like what happened on that thing. He said, "Yeah, I learned Friday that I wasn't going to start, and I didn't want to talk to anybody. I just kind of disappeared." But I'd already reported that Stetson Bennett was going to be the guy, and everybody's like, "He's full of crap." And again, I'm like, I know what's going on in practice. I know who's taking, like on Thursday, I know who took all the reps with number one team. I know who took all the reps with the number one team on Friday on their walkthrough. I know Wednesday, it was Tuesday that Carson basically, he went with the ones, it did not go well. And they decided to put Stetson in and try to get him up to speed. But, Todd Monken could always change his mind. And then the UAB game rolls around and they're announcing the starting lineup. And I'm sweating bullets. I'm out on an island. On a limb, all by myself. And they announced Stetson Bennett starting quarterback. And there's some boos. And there's some people freaking out. And I'm like, I didn't touch the ground, man. I didn't touch the ground for the rest of the game. I was so happy. Thank God. I never live it down. Like right now, I'm never living down the Caleb Downs thing because I said that he was going to be at Georgia and he's not. So,
right.
So, hey, sometimes you're wrong, but that one was beyond anybody's ken, if you will.
18 to 22-year-olds.
Yeah, well, I mean, when you know who took him to sign or look at apartments, when you know exactly who is going to pay him and exactly how much, when you know the classes that he was going to be signed up for, you feel pretty confident saying, hey, this kid's going to play here.
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
Anyway, neither here nor there, but the point being, Carson Beck, definitely prior to that, was not very good. And he was one of those players, not that Coach Donnan said it, but other people said, we missed on him. He was great as a junior quarterback. He wins a state title. Go back and look at a senior film. It wasn't that good. He lost a lot of players. It wasn't it. He gets there in 2020, it's COVID. It's just not working out. 2021, they're like, this kid he's just not it. I mean, he's okay, but we expect him to transfer. And we'll be better off when he does. I mean, I heard that from multiple people inside the program.
Yeah.
Man, what a great story. Inner Mike Bobo.
Hey, 2022, he loses the job. He's supposed to be the number 2 guy, and a walk-on gets it. But we heard last year, well, the year before, they said 2023, we're like, Carson. Excuse me. 2020. 2022, they're like, Carson's really come on. He's different. He's looking really, really good. Okay. And I had people tell me most improved in the spring, most improved in the summer. They're like, this kid's great. And you notice that they kind of cut. I don't know. I really don't. I don't know if it's his accuracy. I don't know if it's arm strength. I don't know if it's him reading defenses, but it was like the light came on. To me, it's kind of like, do you remember when Jalen Ramsey was at Florida and he had another guy? They had 2 like freshmen in the secondary, and those guys got torched all year long.
Yeah.
Then their sophomore, junior years, you couldn't throw on them to save your life.
Yeah.
These guys got so good. The game slowed down for him, but he just developed. He became immensely better, and you had that, it was Stetson Bennett's team, but they're letting Stetson do whatever he wants because they're comfortable with the guy behind him. And we get it. And then when Todd Monken leaves, he turns and tells the Georgia coaches, like, okay, I know you got multiple guys next year. You got Brock Vandegrift, you got Gunner coming in. Carson Beck is the guy, hands down. You don't need to screw around with this. You don't need to bang your head against the wall. You don't need to worry about it. Carson is it. I mean, if I was staying, we will go win a title with Carson Beck. And he almost did. So
Almost 10.
I was told in a much kinder way, when Carson got here, he sucked. Then I was told no one has made more improvements than Carson Beck. And then last year he sets the Georgia's completion percentage record.
Yeah.
I mean, so that's just it's a great story. We need to ask him one time, how did you get better?
Mm-hmm.
But he answers like a coach. He's like a QB. Well, I did one thing at a time, and I kept my focus.
He kept chopping.
I kept chopping. I didn't think about it. I didn't the outside noise, blah blah blah. He won't say this is where I'm changing my mechanics, but he is night and day better than he was. And actually said something on Twitter the other day. I'm like, Carson Beck, in all my years, I've never seen a quarterback get that much better, And so I was like, what about Stetson Bennett? I'm like, Stetson was good when he got here.
Yeah.
Stetson was here 2 weeks and as a true freshman, and you had Jacob Eason going up against Jake Fromm to be the starting quarterback. And I had people telling me, I don't know about those two guys. I don't know who's going to win the job, but if they want to win, they need to play Johnny Football. I'm like, what? Oh, that Stetson kid. Everyone calls him Johnny Football. He's the best one they got.
Yeah, I remember Mel Tucker saying it.
So, yeah, I mean, we covered him in Rising Seniors, and we knew he was good. And I remember we wrote a story about the fact that he was walking on. Nobody else did. And then, he had that first year. We found out how good he was, and then he transferred away. And then we broke the news that he was coming back because the guy at ULL, where he was going to go play, called me up. The offensive line coach that went from Georgia that went to Louisiana. I can't think of him, but he was there. He was an assistant at Georgia and then went down there and became their offensive line coach. And he called me up and go, why are y'all taking my quarterback? I'm like, yeah, Stetson's going to come here. I'm like, oh, he's leaving Jones and transferring there? Yeah, but now he's going to Georgia. So we broke the news he's coming back. He goes, oh, well, the walk-on's coming back. I'm like, y'all don't understand. This kid's really good. So I've always been a believer in him. And we were the ones that asked him about, when we asked Mel Tucker about it. And then all of a sudden everybody knew who the hell he was. Like, oh, yeah, Stetson. I'm like, y'all don't even know how to spell his last name.
Right.
We've been covering this kid for 3 years because we knew he was great, but small. He's so small,
Yeah.
And he's smart and good. And I'm really rooting for him. I think he's a good kid. I always appreciate talking about guys who's fun to interview.
Mm-hmm.
Stetson was always fun to interview because every time you ask him a question, he would pause.
Yeah.
And then give you an answer that you were not expecting. He did not speak in cliches.
Right.
So I'm really rooting for him out there. And I know he's had some issues, but that would be a wonderful story to tell if he can actually, play out.
And we need that Disney movie.
Yeah, exactly. That would be it, but who plays him in the movie?
See, I don't know. There's got to be. You got to find the right age. I'm not sure.
That Shyamalan guy, the one that plays the Wonka guy,
the guy from your favorite movie, Dune. John.
Yeah, from Dune.
That would work.
I feel like that could work.
I think it could work. He's got the hair. He's got the build.
He got the build.
You heard it here first.
Although, hey, let's give Staquavius credit for his that senior year. He put on some muscle mass.
He did. I mean, he really did.
He looked totally different when he came back for his extra senior year, whatever we call it.
Radi, so I'm gonna pivot and ask the question that we ask all of our UGA based folks that come on the show. And you've kind of given us a little bit of your Georgia story, but what is Radi's Georgia story? Like, where does it all begin for you on how you got connected to Georgia and why you became a Georgia fan and frankly a Georgia student?
I mean, kind of followed him growing up. Dad took me like 1 or 2 games, not many. Dad was more of a Falcons fan, so we'd go to Fulton County Stadium. We grew up pretty poor, but one thing Dad could kind of splurge on was those cheap Falcon upper deck seats, with the same people around him. he was a fan until they moved indoors. He couldn't smoke anymore. And then he gave up his season tickets, like, screw this. Uh, but my story goes back to writing a letter. So I got here in 1990, and my buddy Dave McMahon, who's been working for the Athletic Association for years, he works with me at UGA Sports. He was a roommate my sophomore year. He'd already gotten in with the Athletic Association because, I mean, Dave lives sports. He works for CBS, ABC, ESPN, Fox, TNT. I mean, he works every day in the field somewhere in Red Hat, directing games. I mean, every time you watch the CBS game, the 3:30 game, he's worked every one of those for 20 something years. And every time you had like the Aflac trivia question, most of the time Dave's the one that writes that question.
Nice.
So I'm like, Dave, how do I get in?
He was an announcer, wasn't he?
For a little while, he did some, but Dave is just a great statistician. And when you look at those stats, you're like, oh my God, who knew that they were 98% successful when they pitched to the outside on 3rd and 4? I mean, who saw that trend? Well, Dave. And so I'm like, Dave, what you're doing sounds really cool, but how do I get involved in this? He said, well, write Claude Felton. Just let him know that you're interested. So I wrote Claude Felton in like 1990, my first year. And I said, hey, I'm a photographer. I can write some. I'm going to be a journalism student. Before you had to do a couple of years and then apply to the journalism school. So I will be a journalism student. If there's ever anything I can do, please let me know. And didn't hear anything back. 1993, 3 years later, I get a call from Tim Hicks saying, hey, is this Roddy? I'm like, yeah. He said, and he had to hunt me down back then because we didn't have cell phones. Said, I got a letter that you wrote, Claude. Are you still around and can still help us? I'm like, yeah. Said, we have a guy by the name of Jim Gunn. He's working for Sports Illustrated. He's coming into town to cover a game. I think he was there to shoot. It was the Georgia-Kentucky game, and Hines Ward. He's basically kind of doing a feature on Hines Ward, or something. I think that's who it was, and he needs an assistant, basically someone to carry his gear. So they needed, basically, Jim Gunn had reached out to the athletic assistant and said, hey, I'm coming in to shoot the game. Do you have an assistant? Do you have anybody who can help me with my gear? Claude Felton remembered a letter from 3 years ago. Handed it to Tim and said, find this kid.
Wow. He's like, he said if you ever need any help.
Yeah, sure enough. So that's the first time walking on this field. I did that. And then I got in. I helped Damian Strohmeyer, who came in like a couple days later. He was another Sports Illustrated, Reuters photographer. He actually took me to a Super Bowl, which was great. He's like, hey, can you help me in Atlanta? I'm like, yeah. So that was cool. But it was mainly the fact that somebody at UGA had hung onto a letter for 3 years. That got me into the Athletic Association. I was also working at the Georgia Center, taking the pictures of all the athletes. They would come through, and for all the media guys and such. So they're like, oh, yeah, wait, yeah, we know you from that. I'm like, yeah. So then I got in as a student photographer over there. So I was working at the Georgia Center for the Athletic Association and going to classes. But is that somebody at UGA hung onto a letter for 3 years to give me a break into the industry. And I always tell Claude all the time, he retired this past year. I'm like, Claude, I would not be here were not for you. Hanging on to a letter and thinking of me when the opportunity arose. I mean, I could have gone my 5 years. It took me 5 years to graduate. Could have gone my 5 years never having set foot inside the Butts-Mehre building. But Claude remembered the letter, and
wow,
that kindness is defined my career.
Wow. That's crazy. I mean, so, okay, because so
that's why I try to help anybody. I owe young kids, and people reach out to me all the time. Hey, how do I get started in the business? I tell them, hey, I want to be an intern. Okay, let's get you, come with me to practice.
Yeah.
I'll teach anybody how to do what I do. I don't like when they come and compete against me, but right. I've got 30 years advantage on you, so you can compete against me, but I'm gonna try to beat your ass.
So So I mean, and we're talking like, we're talking actual letters, like for the kids listening, not an email.
It was, yeah.
That's wild. Did you? And I'm like, because I'm trying to think back. I mean, like, did you type it up? Was it handwritten? Like, do you
Yeah,
know?
that was typed.
Okay.
I had a Hewlett Packard electric typewriter.
Oh, and
That
it was
showed,
typed on a typewriter. Yes,
yeah,
now we're talking.
that showed you one line of text.
Okay. Yeah.
So it had a little LED screen in it that was literally like that. Okay. And you could see about maybe 70 characters. And you could arrow up and down, and then you hit print and it would print it all out. So it was
Okay.
stored there as you typed it. And
Yeah.
then you could go in and make adjustments and then hit print and it would retype it. And yeah,
That's
that
Okay.
was
funny.
my aunt alum, the woman that helped me get into college. Thank you for the HP typewriter.
That's incredible. I can't believe though that he remembered it like 3 years later that he thought to
Yeah.
do
So people
that.
say, what's your story? I'm like, I just, again, reaching out. I give myself no credit, but I didn't, I tell people all the time, like, how do I get into business? How do I do what you do? I'm like, well,
Hmm.
it took me a long time to get where I am. It's a lot of it is attrition. There are a lot of
Right.
people who, on the beat simply because they stuck it out. And especially when you first start, like you start a new podcast like you guys did. You start at the worst possible time. It would be very easy after,
Thanks, Ratty.
well, I mean, you started during COVID,
Yeah,
I mean,
we
with
we have, we had we previewed a game that never happened twice.
yeah, exactly. It would have been very easy for you to quit, right? You'd be like, okay,
Yeah.
this just isn't worth it. But you
Yeah.
stuck it out. And then, now you're going into year 5. Everybody knows who you are now. And again, not because of any talent on you guys, y'all suck, but you've been around long enough that everybody likes you, or everybody knows who you are. So that's what I say is, look, I put in one letter. Nothing had to happen, but Georgia's a magical place and it's full of great people. And one of them just happened to be Claude Felton. Tim Hicks could have said, look, I can't find this guy, but Tim
Mhm.
found me, reached
Yeah.
out to me. I jumped at the opportunity. I've tried to help people behind me. There's a million stories like that. There are a million people who've made it easier for me, and sometimes just sticking around, staying at it through the lean years. You guys had a lean year that first one,
Yeah.
and now you're who you are, So I look
Yeah.
at, I mean, I actually have a lot of the old negatives and photos that I took from those first few years. And I always think about going back and getting them scanned so I can show pictures. Hey, look, here's Adrian Hollingshead. Here's
Mm.
Will Witherspoon, here's Musa Smith. I'm like, those pictures are so god awful. I was so bad. I find old ones and I'm like, this is terrible. This is like, or the first stories I wrote. I
Yeah.
picked up an old magazine the other day and I'm like, I remember writing about the defense under Joe Kynes. And I'm like, God, you don't know how to write a lead. You don't know how to write a story.
Yeah.
There are typos in this. How did this get past the editor? It just god awful stuff.
No,
You honed your craft.
we can relate. Don't go back and listen to our first episode.
Well, yeah. So, but again, I always say, look, Georgia's a special place, and because of the people that are there and the community, and that's why I've always wanted to give back. I mean, I did again. I never wanted to be in front of the camera. I always wanted to be behind it, and
Yeah.
and that's it.
No, that's incredible. Thanks for sharing that. JP, I was waiting to see when you were going to pull that one out because I knew it was coming.
Love it. I'm always good for it, at least one. I told him in the message that I wanted to ask him about key lime pie because his Twitter profile used to say, I don't know if it still does, used to say destroyer of key lime pies.
Key lime pie is the greatest culinary creation of all time. I mean,
So where's your go-to key lime pie establishment in Athens?
in Athens, honestly, I'll go to Publix.
Man, that's a good answer.
Oh, yes.
Publix key lime pie is killer.
Yes.
Because I always Publix, so I'm like, I will step over you and your dog to get to a key lime pie. Publix key lime pie, it's phenomenal. Here's the thing, I've had I put that in my profile because I'm also I like what key lime pie represents. Where do you normally have it? On vacation.
On
At the
vacation at the
beach. I'm a
beach.
big beach guy. I love the beach. And so to me, it's almost like a mindset. You have the people, in their Twitter profiles, 5 o'clock somewhere, or bourbon guy or whatever. I'm like, yeah, okay, that's a lifestyle. That's your thing. But to me, key lime pie represents my end goal. After I've done cover Georgia forever, I retire on the beach, listen to the games on the radio, and that's the end goal, if you will. But I've actually had a few players' moms make me key lime pies from scratch and bring it to me.
Yes.
Nice.
Whose mom makes the best key lime pie?
No, nope. If you've had more than one person make you a key lime pie from scratch, you will never say one person's is better than the other, because that is a lot of work.
Well played.
Hopefully the week before the Georgia game, the 23rd, that Friday the 23rd and the 24th, I will go to Key West for the first time. I'll be down there hopefully for a very important ceremony, and I will actually get to try key lime in the Keys, which I've had people bring me key lime pie from places down there. They've put it in a chest, flown back with it, and brought it to me. It's pretty good. I advise this: if you can go out on your Twitter profile, or as you guys, maybe a runner across the bottom of your program, if you can talk about one item and people associate you with that item, they will go out of their way to give you that item.
All right, Jim, we got to talk about bourbon on the bottom.
Hey, well, think about it. If you were the guy known for loving Maker's Mark, right?
Yeah.
And everyone's like, oh, he's the Maker's Mark guy. That's his brand. That's his, and you talk about it all the time. Tonight's a two makers night.
Yeah.
What's going to happen when someone sees it? They think of you. And I've had people send me pictures from all over the world. Hey, here's key lime pie flavored, pretzels. Here's key lime pie flavored, X, a million different things. Key lime pie flavored M&Ms. Just odd things. But when they see it, they think of me, which is very kind. And then they send me a picture of it, and I get a kick out of it. So I'm just saying that for branding, for your podcast, would not hurt to be known for a certain item.
Well, it is bourbon. Although Jason Barton did send us a bottle of bourbon, and we were able to we made Kentucky Mules for a game that we shared at the tailgate. So we do accept it.
We do accept
so you talked about it, right? And then someone sent you a bottle.
Yeah.
They said it was what was it? The sevens? I can't remember.
Ale 8 or whatever. It's like the Kentucky. Yeah. It's like a ginger beer.
I'm still trying to. Oh, yeah, ginger beer bourbon.
No, well, so we mixed it. So the Kentucky Mule is like ginger beer, bourbon, and lime.
And Ale 8 was like a big. It was the ginger beer in Kentucky.
It's like the soda of Kentucky, apparently.
Yeah.
Well, if I'm still trying to find Lucky 7 bourbon. I had some when I was in Nashville. It was phenomenal. But when I was in Charleston, I went into a place while my wife was teaching at a conference. And so I'm just walking around Charleston, going into all the different restaurants there, trying a little something different. And I had a woman, she said, yeah, we do bourbon flights here with Elijah Craig. And I'm like, that sounds nice. And but it was like, I'm there at brunch time. It's I'm like, okay. And I said, well, what's your most popular one? She goes, the Elijah Craig ginger infused bourbon. I'm like, ugh, that sounds nasty. Ginger infused bourbon. I mean, does that sound appealing to either one of you?
I can see some cocktails where it would be good.
As a mixer,
they weren't doing cocktails; they're doing a flight. So what do you got them?
Yeah.
So you got them neat, or on a rock. And I'm like, that sounds heinous.
Yeah, I probably wouldn't go with an infused bourbon.
Yeah, especially
go with the more standard.
I'm having the a brunch meal. I'm having eggs Benedict or something.
Right. Eggs Benedict and ginger bourbon.
Yeah, the woman's like, I tell you what, I'll pour you some. If you don't like it, don't worry about it. But if you do like it, you pay for it. I'm like, okay, I'll take that bet. And I loved it. I bought a bottle.
Nice.
But again,
That's
if you guys are
hilarious.
known as, the mule guys, then people think different things to try. So
That's right. Yes, we will always accept
hey,
the bourbons.
I do a show Wednesday night with Russ Tanner, and because he does these great
He's the
barbecue.
barbecue guy. He's the barbecue guy. Yeah.
Yeah.
People all over the country are asking him to come do reviews at their barbecue place.
That's amazing. No, that is a good problem to have right there.
Yeah.
Yeah, seriously.
But again, you have to grind. You guys are in year 4 or 5,
That's right. That's right.
You got to stick it out. So I stuck it out a long time, making myself fat, eating key lime pies, and now people will sometimes bring me key lime pies.
I know I'm going to be on the edge of my seat waiting to see what news breaks while you're in Key West, Roddy. So we'll see what happens there.
Every time you go on vacation.
I'm down and back. We fly down Friday. We fly back Saturday.
Okay.
No, sorry, Thursday.
Hopefully it's at least a couple of days.
No, it is we fly on Thursday, fly out Friday.
Cool.
It's just for a ceremony. It's not to go visit.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
And again, the ceremony's up in the air. So
Okay.
we'll have an announcement about that later on if it works out.
Nice.
So, but again, there's with fall camp here, there's always news. I mean, like we saw a big, Sunday everybody went to practice and they saw that Jared Wilson was on the bike. He wasn't going with the first team. Wasn't first team center today. We saw him running back and forth along the sidelines. God, I'd hate to be injured in a Kirby Smart team because so let's say you have an upper body injury, you'll run the entire practice.
Yeah.
I mean, at least if you're running drills, you can go to the back of the line and catch your breath. No. So you do not want to be injured on a Kirby Smart team. But then, of course, Ellis Robinson had hurt his hand. We saw Michael Williams was wearing a cast today. So, I mean, it's just there's always stuff going on. And Kirby hates that we report all the injury news. But I'm like, when you're only out there for 10 minutes.
Right.
What
else can you say?
You're probably going to report that hey, this guy's wearing a cast, And so,
yeah. Well, yeah, Roddy, it has been such a pleasure having you on. Like John kind of opened with, one of the OGs of the online community for Georgia fans. Big fans of your work. Like I said, no introduction, but everyone knows we can find you on Twitter at Radi Nabulsi and over at ujsports.com as well. But it's been an absolute blast and getting to learn a little bit more about you as well. So it's been a lot of fun.
And guys, thank you because it's been a lot of fun. I'll hang up with you guys now and call my wife.
Good deal.
We appreciate you, Roddy.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Go Dogs.
Go Dogs.